Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
The theme of putting your people first is popular today in leadership theory. Many studies are done and cited that conclusively show that focusing on company culture affects the bottom line in a positive way. But focusing on people and developing people has not always been the hallmark of Western capitalism. In fact, many of the advances towards more humane work come from Christianity. Why is this? And how can harnessing it give us an advantage? Well, everybody, I hope you're enjoying this seminar as much as I am. We're on the 8th part now of what I call the Christian Leader's Advantage. And the optic of this whole series is really to try to demonstrate that our faith in Christ being brought into the workplace does not diminish our capacity to be effective at work. In fact, it represents a real and distinct advantage. So, of course, I'm thinking about this in terms of the bottom line, right? Because that's what most of us think about. But I want to expand that concept a little bit even further. Say it's advantageous not only in terms of the bottom line, which it is, but it's also advantageous in terms of the happiness factor that we all engage in our leadership. I mean, being a leader is tough. It's a service that few people really shoulder. Everybody seems to want power, glory and recognition and, societal effects that are positive for us psychologically. And yet leadership comes with power. And some people have power without leadership, which means they're really in it for themselves, to gratiate themselves. And they act like they're in service, but everything that they do is leveraged in the end for their own good. And that type of person, St. Thomas Aquinas actually refers to as the definition of a tyrant. Okay, he says the difference between a king and a tyrant is the way that what they do with the power that they have. And he says a true king will take the power that they have and then use that at the service of the community that they've been called to serve. Well, that act is an act of leadership. A leader takes the power that they're given by the community and of course the social standing that goes with that, but then they wield it at the service of the people whom they represent, at the service of the people, of whom they are called to lead. And that requires an emotion on the inside, a change of the mindset where you put your people first. Now, obviously, this can be a difficult thing to do because when you're at the top of the game and the people work for you, for example, it's hard to say that you put them first when you're expecting them to deliver on their goods so that your agenda can be advanced. And if your agenda is the company's agenda, well, then it all works wonderfully together. But sometimes your agenda is also, to be able to make the company profitable for a sale or for you to be able to make a greater profit margin, for you to enjoy the life that you sacrificed as you built the business. Or if you take it outside of the business context, it can be in the same way. You could be, when does mom get her life back, right? When do the kids just all decide to chip in? And instead of mom running around crazy in the house trying to serve them all the time, when do I get to advance in who I am, and my hobbies, my intelligence, my skill set, right? So you can look at this at any level of leadership, the same phenomenon is going to take place. The leader has to make a conscientious decision to lay down themselves, lay down their greatness in a real way at the service of building up the people who are around them. And that's a challenge point because it requires us to take the focus away from what we gain and put it on our people. Now, of course, this is a tension point because you can't do that purely. I mean, anyone who describes a purely altruistic behavior is describing a bit of an ideal. Because in the end, we have to survive. The company will not survive if it is not profitable. All right. And I will not be motivated to be the effective leader of that company if I'm not making a large profit margin. Because with that role of leadership, there also comes a huge responsibility that the average worker never even wants to touch, right? The tales from the top are rarely tales of glory and ease. They're usually a tale of tremendous sacrifice, constant pressure, nonstop worry, and few people really want that burden. So should there be a commensurate amount of profit given to those people? It seems reasonable, at least in most cases. But you get the idea here that we're talking about, right? Because it's the same thing with the mom or same thing with the dad. Anytime you're a leader, you also have to get something out of it, right? So, I mean, it's really hard to be the leader of a dysfunctional family without eventually getting depressed. Right? You need that gratification of those moments where everything clicks together and the family's just living in this marvelous harmony, just in order to keep motivated to stay where you're at. So in that balance point, we're not talking about an ideal, but we are talking about a fundamental shift, an option that we take inside to say the power that I wield in order to do good for the people that I serve by my leadership. And that means that I need to adjust the way that I speak to being a way that builds up the people that are working for me, so that they themselves feel that they're having a great experience just by the way that I talk to them. The employee recognition programs, the attitude that I take of remembering names and remembering details about the people who work for me, the time I take to greet them and say hello and spend time with them, the respect that I show my people by having a clean office environment and spending the extra money that they need on the equipment as they stand there or sit there at their desks all day long, or whatever that might be. And many of us aren't in an ownership position. We're in more of a management position, but the same principle holds. It's easy to get mad. It's easy to say, to pound the desk. It's much easier to do that than it is to try to help them solve problems. It's much easier to hold that accountability standard that's very, very high and not develop your people to meet that accountability standard. It's easy, in other words, to not really serve by the power that you have. But I'm here to say, but at the same time, what's our call? Right? Because if we take our call seriously as the apostles of Christ that we are, well, what would Jesus do if he was managing the people? When you look at the people who did manage, right, his 12 apostles, it's amazing to see the example that he gives us. He sends them off 2 by 2. Right, along with 60 others, a total of 72 disciples sent off 2 by 2 in different towns and villages. And then when they come back and he listens to their report of what they did, of the struggles that they had, of the success that they had. And then immediately he invests in them. And he says, come away with me to a quiet place to rest for a while. So not only does he give a task, and not only does he listen and receive what they're doing, but he obviously is going to be coaching them through those experiences. And coaching them through those experiences then involves also a time for them to regroup, put themselves together. He's like literally spending time developing the men who would take the gospel further to the ends of the world. You could look at the gospels and look at the trajectory of each one of the apostles and see where they started and see where they end. And it's amazing to see the development of 3 years of living with Christ. Instead of being shocked, for example, at his teachings, which they kind of are in the beginning, at least sometimes, right? There's different examples of that. But then you have them develop into a cohesive unit of 12 to whom he can reveal deep, wonderful mysteries in John 14, 15, 16 at the Last Supper, when John records for us all of these teachings that go so far beyond what he taught earlier on in his apostolic ministry. They no longer take a shock or are scandalized by Christ. Instead, you can see them entering into his plan. Well, that took 3 years. It took 3 years of work for Jesus to conscientiously develop his people by putting them first. And if Jesus, the Lord and Master, is going to do that, well, then shouldn't we do the same? Maybe it's a matter of us looking at the opportunity that represents to really make an impact through our positions of power to change lives, not just the lives of our consumer, not just the lives of our business partners, but the lives of the people who work for us. the people whom we lead.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So we're looking at the Christian advantage, right? Number 8 here, which is our focus on our people. And we're saying this is an advantage. And I want to say it definitely is in so many ways. I mean, you can look at the financial studies that have been done, so many of them, from all kinds of different companies, showing that a corporation or a company, and you can do the same thing for the family, right? You could do the same thing for the Boy Scout team or the soccer team that you coach, whatever organization. The evidence is that a company or an organization that invests in creating a culture where the workers are gratified by their work, enjoy their work, find their work to be meaningful, will end up redounding in much higher profitability. Now, just to take it outside the business context again, for those of you who don't run companies or who are leading it elsewhere, if you take your swim team, for example. Let's suppose you're a coach in I don't know, Cincinnati, Ohio, of swimmers. And you're like, okay, how am I going to make a great swim team? Well, go ahead and start looking at the sport history movies. They're amazing. All these great teams that did great things, yes, they had talent, but there's something much more required for winning championships than talent. There's teamwork. There's this ability to create a synergy where it's regardless of the talent deficiencies you might have in the front of your opponent, if you can synergize your talents correctly, you can create a result that's greater than the sum of its parts. And that just kind of magic, when teams click together, allows them to perform and do things that are almost miraculous. And they just take our breath away, right? I mean, sport history is replete with stories of incredibly talented teams, who are ranked number 1, etc., and then end up losing to lesser ranked teams who simply work together. Or individuals who give performances that come from the heart, from the guts, where they fight their way through incredible obstacles and in the face of great odds to win victory. Because human motivation is deeper when it's combined with significance. When you find someone who's fighting for something deeper than profit or deeper than politics, or when you find someone who's fighting for real, genuine meaning, well, you're going to find somebody who's motivated to go the extra mile and to perform at a higher level than others. Well, it's the same thing, of course, in our workplaces. Because if our people are coming to work every day looking for a paycheck, and that's all, well, we're going to find people who are working to use the company instead of people who are there to contribute to the company. How can we who are in business align our businesses to touch a deeper aspect of human meaning in the hearts of the people who are working for us? How can we make a practical sales business, a manufacturing center, for example, somehow touch the transcendent? And by transcendent, I'm not talking about God, I'm not talking about religion, although it can be. But how about just meaning, where someone says, I love this company because this company does great things for the community. They do great things for the workers. They actually care about us. And I get it, that many times people say, oh no, that's not the way to go, that's going to be, and I really don't care what they say, because from a Christian point of view, if you can't operate charitably and operate in and through the love of Christ in your management position, then you're wasting your time. And you're wasting everyone else's time because you're contributing to a culture where love is not present. Love needs to be present. There's absolutely nothing Christian about love, okay? It's just that's where Christianity dovetails with the average culture, the average person. The other day I had a chance of talking with a priest who's actually on a leave of absence, so to speak, from ministerial priesthood. And I was asking about his experience because he's spending his time working in a big box department store, right? And because that's what he's doing while he's waiting to engage again in the ministry. And in this time period, I said, what's it like? What do the average people deal with? What are they thinking of? Because he was describing to me that his fellow workers have absolutely zero context with religion. Zero. He said, when they ask me and I tell them I'm a priest, they say, oh, that's cool. I mean, I may as well have told them I was an alligator hunter or I was an astronaut. It would be this, it doesn't even register for them what that means. And, the bridge to talk with them about God is a whole different, aspect. And I said, well, what are they thinking about? And he said, Father, the average person that I work with their life has so many problems that they just spend their time trying to make it through another day. And so he said that the average way that we preach in our churches is just inadequate because these people it doesn't touch them at all. They're focused on their medical issues, the medical issues of their family, of the financial, crises that they're facing individually, of the addictions that they have to go through or whatever it is. And that's what's taking up the majority of their day. And so we talked a little bit about it, and he said, any aspect that you could give them of transcendence, anything of meaning, where they could see that what they're doing contributes in some way or another to a higher good, regardless of whether or not that's from the faith perspective, would automatically lift their spirits. Because everyone is simply focused on getting through the day, getting their paycheck, and getting out of there. And I thought about that because recently I was with a company in Western Ohio that makes aluminum products. And it's a really wonderful company. Led by a really just wonderful leadership team. And they're dedicated to trying to make their employee experience even better for the employees. The name of the company is Superior Aluminum, and it's a superior product. And they're trying to make their company culture superior in every way that they can. Why? Because they're motivated out of this sense of the responsibility that ownership has to develop the people. And by so doing, they're creating a workforce that's loyal to the company in a good way. Because why wouldn't we go the extra mile, push through whatever sacrifices we need to make for a company or an organization that ends up supporting us and supporting others at the same time? I'm thinking of Archbold Furniture, an amazing company up in Northwest Ohio, which hires as a company those who have special needs on purpose. There's several of their employee positions dedicated to those who have special needs. It's just in order to give that community representation in their manufacturing facility and to give those individuals the dignity of being able to contribute by the work of their hands to the betterment of society. And the climate, when you go into those types of companies, it's very different. You can actually feel in the environment that the people come first. Well, these are companies, and there's many of them, right, that actually place the development of people as a priority. And when you talk to leadership teams and you realize that they themselves are gratified, they themselves are satisfied deep down inside by the motivation that they have, that what they're doing makes a difference in the lives of the people who are working there, you realize, is there any other way to be, right? Like, why would we do business in any other way than in a way where we could put love at the center of what we do? When I put love at the center of what I do, here's what's guaranteed. Now all of my management, all of my leadership, all of those who are in charge of anyone else, put the people who are doing the labor for them at the forefront of their priorities. And this means that they really focus their business on what makes the biggest difference and the deepest meaning. The human experience of the workers, of everyone involved in that business. And you can only imagine what's going to happen, right? Because if you do that, how are your people now going to treat their customers? They're going to treat their customers like the company treats them. It's a great way for you even to test out customer service in different places. You can tell when a company takes care of its people because the people will take care of the customer. And when customer service starts to slide, start to look backwards and say, I wonder if that person themselves feels and knows the value of what they're doing from our perspective in terms of leadership.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
Talking about the ways that companies and leaders in general can put their people first. The people that you lead, in a sense, become your number one priority, right? And it's not an absolute, and there's times where it's different, or whatever, but most of the time, this is at least, it's in your top list of priorities to make sure that the people that you are leading are benefited by your leadership. It's essential. Theoretically, this makes so much sense because if we don't have an end point to our material gains, where we say the reason we're making money and the reason we're being profitable is for the sake of something that transcends money and transcends profit. Unless we do that, we're going to end up with a machine that devours the very people who are operating it, right? The economy that ends up becoming the end goal of itself at the expense of the life and the quality of living of the people who are operating that economy, making that economy. Okay, Pope John Paul II put this very clearly in one of his encyclical letters, where he said, man does not live to work, man works to live. Meaning that the sacrifice and the input of resources that we all give to our jobs and to our businesses and our companies has to be for the sake of something higher than the company itself. It has to be for the sake of something more. Otherwise, we are living to work. And if we live to work, well, then the end, there's no real purpose here, right? Because the work never stops. And in the same way, you can always have more stuff. You can generate more product. You can generate more profitability limitlessly. Well, what happens then? What happens is that the lives of people, the lives of families, the number of children in a family, the education that can only take place by time spent with mom and dad at home, all that gets sacrificed as we chase the rat race, right? Run the rat race and chase the dollar where? Endlessly. I'm reminded of a poem, right? This is, Dante wrote a story called Inferno, which is called hell, right? The name of hell. And he describes the levels of hell this is, hundreds of years ago, right? In Italian. Wonderful poem, and you can read it if you want. But in his imagination, the very first level of hell, when you first go through the gates and you find people who are tortured, the very first level is a guy who's running around with a big banner, waving it in the air. And it's just waving in the air. All these people, men and women, have to run behind the banner. But the banner is just running over hills and down hills and up hills and running in circles and running around. And it never comes to a final resting spot. If the people get tired, then there's little hornets and wasps that come out and sting them. And that's so that they have to keep on running. And their hell is to run aimlessly for all eternity. And I think that's fascinating because Dante, now of course Dante's an Italian, right? So he's got a good sense of the finer things in life. But that's just it, right? Having a good sense of the finer things in life, he's like, what would hell be? Hell would be working all day long without ever enjoying the real reason for which you work. And I put that out there because many people are living exactly in that kind of hell. When do you stop and say, I am more than someone who can consume the products that they can buy because they worked hard enough to earn a paycheck to buy products so that they can consume them? Is there anything more in life than consumption? And of course, this is where the Christian comes in. Maybe for the non-Christian world, the answer is no. Just yesterday, I was sitting in the parking lot and a woman drove past in her car and she said, she asked me for directions to a local church and I gave the directions. I'm standing there, of course, in my Roman collar as a Catholic priest, and I tell her where the local church is down the road or whatever. And she says, hey, thank you so much. Listen, next week I'll come to your church, which was unnecessary. She didn't have to say that. That was nice of her. So I asked her, is there anything I could pray for you, about, or do you need anything? And she said, she described a health condition that was very serious that she was suffering from. And then she took a drag on her cigarette and blew it out and then said, I'm just going to try to enjoy my life to the max. And then she sped away. And I wish her well. Hopefully she sped her way over to the church that she asked directions to. But at the same time, I thought to myself, man, this is how a lot of people, this is how our world will operate unless we Christians start to speak to the world about a deeper purpose. Right? Developing our people and putting our people first says that you are the deeper purpose. This company exists in part for the sake of its workers. That this team exists in part for the benefit of the members who are members of the team. That we're not just here to ask you for an infinite amount of sacrifices for which we give you what you can, live on sustainably. Think of the book, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, right? Where you had, how much can the company store sets the prices of the goods that the workers need to live to be, match, penny for penny what the workers earn. Therefore, the workers can never escape because they earn just enough to live. And this wasn't just in fiction, this was in the coal mining towns of Appalachia when you go back in the early part of the 20th century. The same exact thing. The company store was a real deal, and the people in the towns were completely trapped in work that was set so that the company could maximize profitability. Why? Because they didn't care about the workers. That's why. Well, it's not a Christian perspective. We can't take for granted the advances that we've made today, where workers are given safe environments and leadership training and given a fair wage. I mean, the rise of the unions came from a Catholic perspective. And there's all kinds of positions on unions, and I understand everything. But at the same time, the idea that a worker should be given the right to live off of the work of their hands is a position that was created and then promulgated and defended by the Catholic Church over and over and over again as being a principle that comes straight out of the Bible. And I remind you all of that because I'm proud of our Catholic history of defending the rights of workers. And the reason for it is because no society can stand which makes the economy the end goal of itself. The citizens and the good life of the members of that nation are the goal for the economy. And we can contribute to making that effective by, in our own realms of leadership, making sure that people are cared for, that their names are known, that their work is recognized, that true camaraderie can flourish on the teams, that communication is done respectfully, that people enter and leave our workspace environments like people. Wouldn't it be marvelous if we made them even better somehow? That working with us was a high point in their life of problems, where they were able to meet through what we did something of the love of God for them. It's more than a dream, you guys. It's a responsibility. If I have a position of power, it's so that I bless the world thereby, and I bless the world in part, one of the ways, by blessing the people who work for me and making sure that each one of them knows the dignity that is theirs by the way that I treat them when they're at work.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.